Hello, my name is Faith House. I am a student at Winston-Salem State University, Intro to Research 2025. It is November 13, 2025. I wrote my paper on antimicrobial resistance. Introduction. Antimicrobial resistance occurs when bacteria evolve to the point where antibiotics can no longer eliminate or stop their growth. As a result, bacterial infections become extremely difficult to treat. In 2023, roughly 1 in 6 infections tested in labs around the world were resistant to antibiotic treatments. Nearly half of all tested pathogens saw increased resistance since 2018. MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, kills more Americans each year than HIV, AIDS, Parkinson's disease, emphysema, and homicide combined. How did antimicrobial resistance get to where it is now, and what is being done to change antimicrobial resistance? Antibiotic resistance has evolved in the US and globally due to the overuse of antibiotics in humans and animals. International education, vaccines, and clean water are key foundations for combating antimicrobial resistance. Mechanisms of antibiotic action. Bactericidal agents work by destroying bacterial cell walls or membranes, leading to bacterial death. Examples include penicillin, levofloxacin, and ciprofloxacin. Carbapenems interfere with bacterial cell wall formation. Gentamicin blocks protein production. Fluoroquinolones inhibit bacterial DNA replication. Vancomycin disrupts cell wall construction. Each of these agents targets a specific bacterial function, effectively eliminating the organism. Antimicrobial resistance impact on humans. Hospital data suggests that pathogens causing neonatal infections are frequently resistant to ampicillin and gentamicin. Many newborn in hospitals in South Asia are now treated with carbapenems as first-line therapy for sepsis or presumed sepsis. Antibiotics are needed to enable complex surgeries, transplants, and procedures on immunocompromised patients. Patients with a high risk of infections might be advised against medical procedures that could otherwise benefit them because of the risk of untreatable postoperative infections. Causes of antimicrobial resistance. The overuse of antibiotics clearly drives the evolution of resistance. Studies have demonstrated a direct relationship between antibiotic consumption and the emergence and dissemination of resistant bacterial strains. In many other countries, antibiotics are unregulated and available over the counter without a prescription. Many patients self-diagnose their suspected infections and opt to go directly to a pharmacist. In Ethiopia, for example, it is common to obtain an antimicrobial without a prescription from a healthcare provider. The assumption is that self-diagnosing will ultimately lead to reduced healthcare costs. However, this practice can have long-term negative effects. Incorrectly prescribed antibiotics also contribute to the promotion of resistant bacteria. Studies have shown that treatment indication, choice of agent, or duration of antibiotic therapy is incorrect in 30 to 50% of all cases. One U.S. study reported that a pathogen was defined in only 7.6% of 17,000 patients hospitalized with community-acquired pneumonia. 30 to 60% of the antibiotics prescribed in intensive care units are unnecessary, inappropriate, or suboptimal. Impact on animal health. Antibiotics are used extensively in livestock for disease prevention and treatment, surpassing global human use. In 2017, antimicrobial use in animals was estimated to account for 73% of all antimicrobials used globally, projected to increase by 67% by 2030. Bacteria found in livestock are frequently present in fresh meat products and may serve as a reservoir for resistant genes that could potentially be transferred to pathogenic organisms in humans. Antibiotics are used in food animals to treat clinical disease, to prevent and control common disease events, and to enhance animal growth. 16% of all lactating dairy cows in the U.S. receive antibiotic therapy for clinical mastitis each year. Nearly all dairy cows receive intramammary infusions of prophylactic doses of antibiotics following each lactation to prevent and control future mastitis, primarily with penicillin, cephalosporins, or other beta-lactam drugs. 15% of beef cows that enter feedlots receive antibiotics for the treatment of clinical respiratory disease, but therapeutic antibiotic doses are also administered to 10% of apparently healthy calves to mitigate anticipated outbreaks of respiratory disease. 42% of beef calves in feedlots are fed tylosin, a veterinary drug, to prevent liver abscesses that negatively impact growth, and approximately 88% of growing swine in the U.S. receive antibiotics in their feed for disease prevention and growth promotion purposes, commonly tetracyclines or tylosin. Environmental contributions to antibiotic resistance. A high percentage of these antimicrobial drugs are excreted through urine and feces, released into the environment either directly or indirectly through wastewater. Concentrations of antimicrobial resistant genes in antimicrobial resistant organisms have been detected in environmental samples recovered from hospital and urban treated wastewaters. The use of antibiotics and fungicides in crop production could introduce antimicrobial drug resistance and resist microbes into the environment. Inadequate treatment of wastewater exacerbates the spread of antimicrobial resistance. Over 56% of domestic and industrial wastewater is released into the environment with little to no treatment. Yet untreated or inadequately treated wastewater is often used for irrigation purposes and greatly contributes to water and food security in developing countries. Global strategies and interventions. One of the many reasons behind the irrational use of antibiotics is a lack of awareness and knowledge of antibiotic use and antibiotic resistance. We need to improve awareness and educate among antimicrobial resistance and its impacts both in and outside of clinical settings. Surveillance programs, greater access to susceptibility testing, government controls on import, manufacture, and use, development and use of vaccines, and incentives for pharmaceutical companies to supply drugs to these countries will help us with antimicrobial resistance. The irrelevant use and consumption of antibiotics, their over-the-counter availability, the absence of knowledge regarding the safe disposal of expired and unused antibiotics have increased antibiotic resistance by manifolds. In France, a public health campaign to spread public awareness of viral respiratory infections and antibiotic resistance led to 27% reduction in antibiotic use over 5 years. WHO, along with its partners, have launched the Antibiotic Resistant Stewardship Program. In the United Kingdom, the Keep Antibiotics Working campaign was launched in 2017, reducing antibiotic prescriptions by 17%, contributing to an overall 7% reduction in antibiotic use across from healthcare settings. In India, the MedWatch initiative has focused on monitoring antibiotic prescriptions and raising awareness in hospitals. This program contributed to a 20% reduction in antibiotic misuse in targeted hospitals by 2020. Vaccines. The Hib vaccine has been instrumental in reducing the burden of pneumonia worldwide. The number of Hib cases in under 5 children declined within the 5 years after the introduction of the Hib vaccine. Coverage is low in key countries such as India and South Africa. Hib is the only major vaccine-preventable gram-negative pathogen. We need more vaccines and more compliance to stop the spread of antimicrobial resistance. Conclusion. Antibiotic resistance has evolved in the U.S. and globally due to the overuse of antibiotics in humans and animals. International education, vaccines, and clean water are key foundations for combating antimicrobial resistance. Antibiotics are used continuously in animals as well as livestock, which we consume. A high percentage of these antimicrobial drugs are excreted through urine and feces, which are subsequently released into the environment through wastewater. Strengthening public awareness, enforcing responsible prescriptions, reducing agricultural misuse, and investing in global vaccination and sanitation efforts. The future of modern medicine depends on our collective commitment to preserve antibiotic effectiveness through education, innovation, and global cooperation. Thank you.